Welcome to Chakras and Cuss Words, a podcast that dives into self-improvement, completing goals, and overcoming modern-day obstacles. I am your host, Catherine, and together we will address our fears, establish self-awareness, and complete self-growth through honesty and reflection. Remember to please like and share this podcast. Thank you. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Chakras and Cuss Words podcast. And today I have my special friend and I would say spiritual, I would say you're almost like a coach, and you just really help people find their enlightenment through just mental well-being and your mental clarity, and finding new modalities to kind of get through every day. She is also the founder of Mood Connect, which is based on a holistic insight of how the mind works and creating mindset through especially with mental awareness and mental health. So I'm very happy to have Miss Amy here. Amy, please introduce yourself and let us know a little bit about you.
Thanks so much for having me, Catherine, on your show. This is like such an honor. Your podcast is, just like so widely known about and loved. And I'm so grateful to have the opportunity to be a guest on this amazing podcast. A little bit about myself. My name is Amy Uzunian, and I'm the CEO and founder for Mood Connect. Our mission is to create healthier workspaces. We definitely we work on focusing on mindset and mental health and wellness in workspaces, but in life in general. And how that applies to my life in helping people in a spiritual way, in coaching, is I've helped people in various ways through my background in yoga and meditation, and also my spiritual background in tarot reading. I also have another club on Clubhouse called Potion Global, where I would have rooms, for tarot reading or astrology readings, and helping people with, I guess, doing consulting work with people on how to achieve their greatest potential through the knowledge that I have, in those kinds of areas of tarot reading and just, I guess, psychic background that I have.
I love you brought that up. You're like, just fucking psychic, okay? What else do you want me to say? Background. I get feelings and intuition that most people don't really tap into, and I love that you just went full forward and you just said it. So yeah, I really think that, and today's podcast is focused on basically the mindset that comes in with everyday rituals and quote unquote spells and practices, and kind of like centered base areas where people can tap into that area. And I do like that you brought up that, you have quote like psychic abilities, strong intuition, and you probably consider yourself like an empathetic person and I can't pronounce that word. But that you are able to bring in a lot of feelings and emotions from the outside within you, and then you are then able to distribute it back to the universe. So that is great. How did you kind of, like, a little background about you, like how did you always know that you were like this? Did you always know that you were in this area of special intuition and special clarity? Did you always know it was there?
You know, I always kind of felt like there was this other sensibility that I had, in connecting with nature and connecting with people who were kind of the outsiders
Yeah.
of the world. Um, I and it's interesting because I grew up in a very Christian home. My parents were Pentecostal Christians, um, and uh, and it was very strictly it's very interesting because I mean I am completely like on the other side of all of that now, but there and my parents were very much against Halloween, like anything that had to do remotely with witchcraft or anything like that. And my sister and I, we were very much like raised in this very Christian religious kind of home, and everything outside of that was secular.
Mm.
And so I got my first job when I was 13. I was just helping out with washing dishes at a little cafe, and this woman who would come in frequently to get coffee and stuff, she read tarot cards, and she saw that I was, she had a deck of tarot cards with her, and I think she was doing a reading for someone in this cafe, and I was watching her doing it. And afterwards, she talked with me, and she was like, "Oh, like, would you like a tarot reading?" And I was like, I felt very drawn to it,
Mhm.
and it felt like something I was very interested in. But I also knew that it was something I wasn't supposed to be doing, But I was always so drawn to those things that I'm
It
not
was
supposed to be doing this,
right.
but I'm drawn to it. It feels very comfortable and very good for me. Um, and so I got my first deck of tarot cards when I was 13. And and very an interesting little quick story to this is that my mother, she found, I hid the deck of tarot cards. This
Oh,
woman, old woman, she gave me my first deck of cards. I I hid them in my room, and my mother found them, and she took my sister with her. My sister at the time, she was 10. She took my sister with her to a lake, and very ceremoniously threw the deck of cards onto this lake, and then
wow.
told my sister to tell me what happened.
Oh.
And I because my mother didn't even want to talk with me about it, and I never talked with her about this, because my sister came back to me, and because I saw that the empty carton, right, with no cards, and I was
Yeah.
like, what happened? And my sister said, oh yeah, mom took me to this lake and threw the deck of cards into the lake, and then told me to come and tell you what happened to the cards. And she just
Mm.
never wanted to talk with me about it, never spoke about it. And then years, and there is some resolution to this, so I'll tell you really quick. Years and years later, it was about, I guess, maybe about a year and a half ago, my mother asked me, and this is, after she knows that I'm a practicing pagan, we've already been through all this stuff, and she's not so into it, that I'm a practicing pagan, but whatever, you
Right,
know.
whatever. You have to do what's
And
right for you.
she asks me, "What do you want for Christmas?" I say, "Like, you'll." She knows I don't practice Christmas. I practice Yule.
Yeah.
So I'm like, well, I don't know, whatever you want. And she said, no, no, what do you want? What do you want for Christmas? I said, you know what? There's this deck of cards that I would really like for Christmas. And I sent her the Amazon link for it. It was actually this deck, the Santa Muerte tarot deck. And like, and on the cover of this deck, I'll show you, you know, your listeners can't see this, but it's like this big skull. The other side, it's like the Santa Muerte, like this pregnant Mother Mary, Santa Muerte,
Right.
right?
I
You
love
know,
that.
Day of the Dead thing. And she was like, I'm not getting that for you. Yeah. And like that's the Amy, you know I don't support this stuff. That's the devil. And I was like, well, you asked me what I wanted, and that's what I want. And she knew exactly what was up. What I was doing was I was trying to heal this wound.
Yeah.
What she took something that was mine, that was given to me, that was very important to my spiritual path.
Hmm.
And I brought it back in and said, okay, now you're going to give that to me now back.
Yeah.
You're going to give it back to me. And so that's kind of, I mean, you know, that's a long story way of
Yeah.
you know, telling you about how my
It all,
spiritual journey, you know, like how it all kind of started and came full circle at 42. I was 42 at that time when she gifted me that deck, you
wow.
know, hesitantly. She did not want to do that, but she did it.
She, yeah, that's a great story. I'm sure when your family, you know, and you said, well, I practice, you know, paganism now and I'm a pagan. I'm sure for them, it was probably like very like, you know, hard for them. Hold on 1 second. Get this dog out. He's
It's
so
okay. It's
crazy.
okay.
Well, that is an absolutely amazing story. And I love that you had almost like a full circle from it and a transition where it had a area where it resolved. So I'm sure when your parents kind of heard, they were like, oh my God, like, you know, I'm a pagan. I don't practice Christianity. I don't practice the Catholic religion. And they probably were like a little freaked out. But I love that you've definitely address like this is what's right for me and I'm going to stick with it. When you had that full circle, has that kind of brought that healing and that closure kind of to an area where you're like, okay, it's moving forward in the healing process?
Yeah, yeah. And I feel like for myself in my own spiritual journey, the ability to heal a lot of these deeply seated wounds that we have, it's so important to, you know, to identify where it starts and then start to uh, go through that thread and find the places where mending is needed, you know,
Mhm.
where healing and care and love is needed, where we can breathe into those spaces. I think I've heard you speak about this before, about going through the different, you know, chakras and finding the spaces where we're not feeling wellness, we're not feeling good,
Right.
and breathing in, you know, that kind of healing and care into those places and identifying like where what areas are connected to those places in our own personal lives, right? Um, and and so where I found my spiritual wound really kind of started was in my own ancestry,
Mhm.
because you see, like my father's side of the family, my namesake, my last name is Uzunian, and that's
Union.
Armenian.
It's yeah.
Now,
I remember you said you were Armenian. No,
yeah,
like yeah.
yeah, many years ago, you know, I mean, when I was a child growing up, I thought, I was told, and this is very true, that Armenians were the first Christians.
Mm.
Christ, when he went on his missionary journey, um, he was spreading the word of Christ, converting people to Christianity. And he first went to Armenia and spoke with the king. And at the time, all the Armenians there were practicing pagans. It's just very specific kind of paganism that's very much tied in with Greek and Roman traditions and rituals. We're talking about rituals,
Right.
right? Um, and it's very much connected with paganism. Um, and so when Christ came to Armenia and spoke with the king of Armenia, um, I that day, the king of Armenia said, "You know what? This is great. I'm a Christian now. Now all of Armenia is Christian."
Mm,
Well, so when I first knew about that, I was like, wow, isn't that amazing? Armenians were the first Christians, and it was
right.
almost like this badge of honor kind of thing. But it didn't seem like it felt like there was something wrong with this. I couldn't really quite fully understand it. It wasn't until maybe a couple of years ago, about 3 or 4 years ago,
Mhm.
I I thought to myself, well, what really what was it really like?
Right.
um I were people really just like, oh wow, great, now we're Christian, now we're all
Right.
practicing Christians, or was it more like people practicing their religion in secret and
Right.
possibly being imprisoned or killed for practicing paganism, you
Wow.
know, and being forced into practicing Christianity, because that's what it really was. It was the
Right.
Christianization of the world, you know, and being forced into those new practices. And so I felt like, wow, you know what, maybe this is my calling to bring my culture back to its true, spiritual roots in
Yeah.
pagan.
From almost like tapping deep into your ancestral roots and going past the taught religion and going into the religion that in, like, if it's your native or indigenous, but the true the true spiritual practices before Christianity came, because
Yeah.
Christianity was actually something that was taught to many people. It wasn't something that they naturally adapted to or naturally created within their communities and within their culture. So I really love that, you're bringing this up. When you decided, like, I am going to be fully out of this area of Christianity, and I'm now going to do a full dive into my pagan roots. How did you get on this voyage, or how did you get on this mission where it started to become a practice for you, where it turned into an everyday thing?
Um, well, I got more deeply rooted in my spiritual practice once I started to work with some spiritual teachers, really. I mean, like before then, I had some spiritual practices. Maybe I went to some gatherings with other witches and pagans, went to some full moon or new moon gatherings. I'm sure all of us have gone to these, like, new moon or full moon circles, and um, like get in touch with our femininity and stuff like that. But I started to work with some spiritual teachers, two of which kind of came to me about 3 years ago. One of them I've been working with really closely for the past 4 years, and uh, and I feel like having a teacher, it keeps us accountable and continuing to work on ourselves, and kind of, it's, I mean, I feel like it's important for me so that I stay grounded and accountable in what I do. And also, teachers are also, can become students. Like the student teacher relationship, for me, it's a very important one, where there's that kind of relationship, there's that trust, and like you're kind of pushing each other to do better, to be more firmly rooted in what you're doing, on a consistent kind of basis. Um, and so kind of how I've stayed rooted in my own spiritual practice in a lot of ways. Yeah,
Yeah.
through having a teacher.
And since you've created a mental health app and awareness group and business, how has it been that people are taking in that, you are very spiritually based in your own individual process of being a witch and paganism? And is it something that's easy to talk about, have you noticed, or has society kind of made it a little bit more difficult with this journey?
You know, it's interesting. I feel like our society is starting to open up and realize, and this is the reason why I started Potion Global. Potion Global, the whole idea behind it, and I mean, after Mood Connect kind of takes off, I really kind of want to work on this idea of Potion Global even more, is the idea that witches and pagans, people who have alternative spiritual beliefs, they exist everywhere in every type of industry. Christianity and Catholic religion, Judaism isn't like, the standard practice belief anymore. Like lots of people are into tarot or crystals, or all these other kind of spiritual practices, and maybe don't even call themselves witches in public, or witches in the closet.
I love the
Lots of,
closet witch.
yeah, the
you know,
closeted witch,
the
right? Yeah.
closet witch. It's like I can't, say that I'm a witch, but I believe this and I do this and but I'm not a witch. And it's like, okay, that sounded really witchy right now.
Yeah, because it's still kind of something that people are like, oh, you're a pagan, you're a witch, like all this stuff. But I will tell you what, very interesting thing that happened about a month or so ago. I was in Clubhouse. Catherine and I, we met on Clubhouse, right? Okay, so everybody knows about this.
Yes, Clubhouse has become, I feel like if any of my listeners aren't on Clubhouse, you probably should be asking yourself why. Why am I not on Clubhouse yet? Because most likely this is where you will find all of my guests and some great conversations in that on that app. So okay, yes. So tell me, Amy, what happened?
Okay, so I was doing tarot readings on in my Potion Global Club on Clubhouse, and this guy comes in who's an investor. I tap into his bio and I'm like, oh, this guy's an investor. Like, wow, an investor wants me to give him a tarot reading. Like, he's like an investor businessman. Like I just like doing all this business in the US and Europe and Africa, like all these places, right? And 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 most of the time people who come in and ask me for a tarot reading are very spiritual people, like their bio is filled with like, human design and like, these other spiritual kind of things. And I'm like, oh, these are my people, right? But this guy comes in and he's an investor. I'm like, wow, this is amazing, like, okay. So I say, do you have a question in mind? Because this is why I always ask, like, do you have a question in mind? Do you just want a general reading? He says, yes, I have a question. I'm not sure about whether or not I should get I should accept government funding for this project that I'm doing, or if I should do private funding for this big project that, I'm overseeing. And I'm like, okay, like this is an interesting kind of question, Um, and and so that's a short answer to you, okay? That, yeah, traditionally people are not really supposed to be really into these kinds of spiritual practices. But here's this investor who comes to me and asks me what my thoughts are on what action he should take. So what the card showed me was that he should wait 7 days before accepting the government funding, and like to weigh the pros and the cons of how this will affect the overall project. And
Mhm.
so it takes 7 days to, and I said, meditate every day for 7 days, and you will find your answer by the seventh day. And he did that. And then a month later, he came back to me and he said, thank you. That was exactly what I needed to do. And everything worked out beautifully.
Oh, that's
And now that
awesome.
guy, we're working with each other, and he's a potential investor for Mood Connect. He's
Nice.
committed some money to into Mood Connect, and he got us. I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be pitching to an accelerator, abroad. I'm not going to say where exactly, but I'm pitching to an accelerator program that's going to, if Mood Connect is accepted, it will be, that will mean $150,000 in seed money from Mood Connect. So,
Nice.
you know,
That's
so
amazing.
so the thing is, so I feel like, it's like the pandemic did a lot of things for us.
Yeah, it did.
It made people realize that we have to be our true selves. We have to commit to being our true selves in so many ways, and let that be known,
Yeah.
and step out of the closet, because this is our life. This is the only life that we have been guaranteed in life, and that nothing else after this life is even guaranteed, and that
Right.
that we have to live this life as we were meant to live it, in a public way.
Mhm.
And if we don't do that, then we are depriving ourselves of an amazing, beautiful life
Oh, yeah.
that we really, that we can harness, and that being pagan, being a witch, it's really no different than being a Christian or a Jew or a Muslim. It's a
Right.
spiritual practice. And what we do in our own spiritual practice, it's not going to change our ability or accountability in being a nurse, a doctor, a lawyer, a business owner, or like a makeup artist,
Right.
it
Right.
doesn't change it. Yeah.
No. I love that you brought it up, because I really think that people are starting to get more like acceptance towards the whole, just even like the term witch, just so, just so like has that kind of like shadowy, Halloweeny effect that, this is something that is supposed to be spooky, and, we're all supposed to be like scared of and all that. And it's like, no, and I think people are starting to see that, witchcraft or spells or rituals or intentions have been placed before Christianity. And when you even think about the religion of Catholic, like that is probably one of the most witchiest religions out there. It
Yeah.
really is. So it's funny that, we have this such a spooky background when we say, yes, I consider myself a witch, or I consider myself a non-Christian spiritual guide or practitioner, what spiritual practices or intentions or spells or rituals would you say have really helped you through your spiritual journey that you use pretty consistently?
So one thing I wanted to say to start off is that I consider uh, rituals or practices something that everyone does. A ritual is just something that you do. Yeah, I mean, people have daily rituals, right? You know, if I mean, you can ask somebody, what's your morning ritual? Right? And it doesn't have to be a spiritual connected with a spiritual practice at all, as far as like what people think. Like they're like, what's my morning ritual? I wake up, I go, go use the bathroom, I go get a cup of coffee, and then like sit down at my desk, turn on my computer, check my email. That's my morning ritual, right? Now, as far as when we get into a more spiritual practice, then my ritual, um, I have it very closely connected with the cycles of the moon, um, and the cycles of seasons. And that's really truly, if anybody, I mean, and one of my advisors for Mood Connect, I had to really explain to him, like as we were talking about religion one day, and I had to explain to him what, that paganism, it's really not this like, oh, witchy, like we do animal sacrifices and, blood ritual and all this kind of crap. It's connected with the cycles of the season, and that the holidays, and rituals that are connected with paganism are very very much connected with agriculture. And when are you supposed to be planting? When are you supposed to be harvesting? When are you supposed to be, planting new seeds, and that whole cycle that goes on and on and on. And that these are like, there are rituals that we do to honor the sun and the moon, and and the earth, and developing connections with people, when to develop connections with people, when to be in isolation and quiet. So so uh, uh so my rituals, they very much revolve around like the cycles between the dark and the full moon, right? In the dark moon, we're more to ourselves, more in silence, manifesting, possibly meditating, uh, silent meditation, or fasting, even in some instances, clearing away. So what I do is I clear my altar every new moon, and clear off everything from that, the past spells or rituals that I did before, and wipe everything anew, put on a new table covering for my altar, set up my altar for the new cycle. And then at the full moon, that's when I get in and do all of the, because I'm a candle witch. So I do all my candle witch work, you know, like moving up towards the full moon, on the full moon. And then that's when I also do some of my my own other kind of full moon rituals that are tied in with my garden and all of that. And then doing more of the harvesting of, bringing in, like saying, okay, this is what I'm welcoming into my life, and celebration. Full moon is about celebration, being like, hey, let's connect with more people, do more networking and everything, building community, you know. Um, and and that's kind of how I do that kind of cycle. Now, sometimes there have been instances this past month or so being one of those kind of instances where I my rituals, they're not as on point, because holidays and everything. COVID definitely kind of
Yeah.
put a jam in some stuff. And so, there were a couple of new moons where I was like, oh, I have my kid with me. I'm not able to really do all of the rituals that I normally would do on schedule when I would normally do them. And so, I feel like for any other witches out there who you're like, oh, you're like, oh my God, man, I wasn't able to do this thing that I normally do during this moon cycle, and
Yeah.
makes you feel oh, I didn't do this, this candle ritual, the way I wanted to because I was dealing with my sick kid or all these other things going on in my life. You know what? That's okay. Give yourself
Right.
grace.
Yeah.
The work we're doing, it's not easy work.
No, it's
Spiritual
not.
work is hard,
Yeah, definitely. Spiritual work takes time. It's not like it's something that just you wake up and you're like, I'm spiritual. It takes time. It takes a lot of practice, and it takes a lot of finding what works for you, because what works for you might not necessarily work for somebody else. And everybody's spiritual journey is different, and that's what I like about spirituality, is that it has that adaptive process where you can really find what works for you versus what works for somebody else. Because I really like astrology, tarot, oracle, and the chakra system. Those are like my three favorite that I'm like, I love these, and then I like learning about other modalities. Like if it's like now I'm going mind blank, if it's the Akashic records, or if it's like human design, or Buddhism, or whatever it is. I like learning about them, but those three are really the ones that I tend to stick to the most for myself, because that's what I'm used to. That's what works for me. So
Right. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And I feel like when you do what you love, then you're gonna love what you do even more.
Mhm.
And you get more and more invested in that. And yeah, I mean, oh, I know nothing about the Akashic records. I know nothing about human design. I find that a lot of that kind of stuff, it's very interesting. It's not something that I've committed myself to learning about,
Right.
in a very big way. Um, and I think that that's okay. I have a huge amount of respect for people who do have, a breadth of knowledge in these kinds of areas. And I love listening to people speak about these kinds of things. Important to have a very good focus of what what you want to learn more about, what you're into, and and just focusing in on honing in on those uh, uh, you know areas of interest, to learn more so that you can share it even more with other people, because really, I mean, like Catherine, we're healers, right? And yeah, yeah. And the reason why we were drawn to this path is so that we're able to to take in these this go on this spiritual journey, heal ourselves so that we can heal others, we can help
Right.
others, we can help
Help
people
others.
to be their best self, you
Mhm.
know
Yeah.
and yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. And please let the listeners know how they can find you, and where will you be, how to get in touch with you, and how can they get connected to Global Potion, Mood Connect, and all that fun stuff.
So, yeah, best way to get connected with me is either through Instagram or you can even email me or find me on Clubhouse. I am at Mood Connect for all, Instagram and on Clubhouse at Mood Connect. My email is Amy, AMY, at moodconnect.com. Potion Global is a club that's on Clubhouse, and I usually do rooms on there on the weekends, Saturday and Sunday, sometimes for new moon or full moon. And yeah, thank you so much, Catherine, for having me on your show. This has been a really wonderful experience in chatting with you and sharing some of these stories. And I'm just really grateful to have had this opportunity. And yeah, I love the work that you do
Thank
and
you.
really grateful for you.
Thank you. Thank you. And I just want to thank everybody for listening. And as always, all Amy's links will be in the show notes. So you could click the links and get right in contact with her. And thank you so much for listening. Please give Shoppers and Customers a review, a like, and a subscribe. And of course, a share. Get your friends involved too. So everybody have an amazing day. Bye.
Bye.